I thought the biggest challenge would be seating arrangements, not getting erased from my own engagement party. The call came just after 2:30 on a Wednesday afternoon, my least favorite hour of the week. I was reviewing window specifications for a sustainability project when my phone buzzed with a familiar name. Mom. I almost didn't answer. I should have trusted that instinct. Claire, darling, she began, her voice dripping with polished calm. I wanted to let you know we've had to cancel the reservation at the Oak Ridge Terrace. I blinked. What? Why? The engagement party is in 2 weeks. The invites are ready. Well, yes, she replied, as if I had stated something quaint. But your father and I have decided it's just not the right fit. Financially, logistically, it's all become a bit excessive. Excessive. A word that had never once applied to any of Vanessa's events. I moved from my desk to the corridor outside our firm's open workspace, pacing past glass panels and muted hallway carpet. Mom, we put down a deposit. You helped me choose the menu. Her silence cracked ever so slightly. Things change, Claire. You know that. We just think it might be best to start with something simpler, more in line with your future. There it was, that phrase again. Your future, coded language for your choice of partner. My throat tightened. This is about Evan, isn't it? Oh, Claire, she sighed, as though I'd accused her of a crime instead of a betrayal. Let's not turn this into something dramatic. You know how much we care about you. We just want what's best. You mean someone with a different resume? She didn't respond. The silence said more than she ever could. I ended the call with a clipped, "Thanks for the notice," and leaned against the cool plaster wall. It was like the air had gone stale around me. Mom always said she wanted the best for me, until I chose someone who didn't fit her definition of best. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Vanessa. Heard about Oak Ridge. Ugh, so sorry. But, silver lining? Mom's letting me use it for my birthday bash next weekend champagne fountain, baby. The words burned. I read the message 3 times, hoping it would rearrange itself into something more forgivable. It didn't. I walked back to my desk like a woman retracing the steps to a crime scene. I sat, opened the digital file labeled Engagement Invite, Final Draft, and stared at the cream gold layout I had designed myself. Script font, tasteful accents, a sketch of the terrace balcony where we were supposed to toast our future. Then, with a few taps, I deleted it. No fanfare. Just gone. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even feel shock. Only the deep, echoing hollowness of being told, again, that love, on its own, was never going to be enough for them. They wanted polish, pedigree, a match that would look good on paper, in family photos, in Christmas cards with embossed gold ink. Evan had none of that, just intelligence, kindness, and the unshakable belief that we could build something real from nothing. I closed my laptop. Then I picked up my phone and typed the only thing that felt honest. Change of plans. We're doing this our way. I wasn't supposed to see it, but the florist delivery van parked outside said otherwise. It was a white box truck with gold script stenciled on the side. La Fleur Fine Florals. The back door was wide open, revealing buckets of white roses, hydrangeas, and carefully labeled arrangements. One box caught my eye. My name wasn't on it. Vanessa, Riverside Terrace, Saturday. I parked a little further down the curved driveway of my parents' estate, hands gripping the wheel hard enough to ache. They hadn't just canceled the party. They'd handed the entire venue over to my sister. Quietly, deliberately. The front door was unlocked. It always was. That house didn't believe in locks so much as boundaries disguised as hospitality. I stepped inside without knocking. Laughter echoed from the sunroom, high and glassy. I followed it like a bloodhound to the scent of truth. There they were. Mom, Dad, Vanessa, Aunt Judith, and a few well-coiffed planners with fabric swatches fanned out like playing cards. The room smelled of eucalyptus and money. My mother looked up first. Her smile froze mid-word. "Claire, we weren't expecting you." "I can tell." My voice came out flatter than I intended. My father straightened from where he was holding a sample wine glass. Vanessa blinked rapidly, her cheeks flushing. The others fell silent, suddenly fascinated by place settings. I walked in slowly, letting my eyes move over the table layout, the cascading sample centerpiece, the calligraphy on a mocked-up menu. Vanessa's 28th, a night to remember. I ran a finger over the embossed header. "The Riverside Terrace looks lovely." No one moved. Mom cleared her throat. "There was a last-minute cancellation. It seemed like a waste to let the date go unused." "Right," I said. So, by sheer coincidence, my canceled engagement party left a prime venue available for Vanessa's birthday. Dad stepped forward, arms crossed like a CEO about to deliver a quarterly loss report. "Claire, let's talk privately." "No," I said, looking him straight in the eyes. "Let's talk right here, with all the witnesses." Mom's tone turned syrupy again. "Darling, this isn't about you. Vanessa's birthday was coming up regardless." I turned to Vanessa. "And you were fine with this?" She bit her lip. "I didn't know until after they booked it." "But you stayed silent," I said. "Because why rock the boat when you're already sitting comfortably, right?" Her eyes welled with something that looked like guilt, but might have just been discomfort. Dad exhaled, long and heavy. "This isn't about a party, Claire. It's about the choices you've made. Evan, he's not the kind of man a Whitfield marries." I laughed, sharp, hollow. "And what kind of man is that exactly? One with a family crest? A trust fund? A yacht membership?" He didn't answer. I turned to both of them now. "You didn't just cancel my party. You canceled your daughter." A pause followed, as deep as a crater. Then someone shuffled uncomfortably. Aunt Judith, I think. The planners quickly gathered their swatches and made polite excuses to leave. I didn't stay to watch them squirm. As I walked toward the door, heels clicking against the marble, I heard a whisper behind me. "Vanessa, you deserve better than all of this," she said, barely audible. "I just can't choose right now." They thought Evan was just the guy who held my hand. They didn't know he was holding a multi-million-dollar secret. I sat on the edge of the couch, legs curled beneath me, still in the dress pants from work, but with my blouse half untucked and mind wholly unraveling. The soft hum of the city outside our apartment window felt like white noise to the thoughts racing through my head. I had driven back from Amberley Village in a daze. The flowers, the table settings, the nerve. Every detail etched in my memory like a fresh bruise. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was something colder, sharper. The kind of clarity that only comes after you've accepted the people who claim to love you never actually tried to know you. Evan came out from the kitchen, 2 mugs of tea in hand, his face lined with concern. He sat beside me and handed me the cup, his eyes asking questions he didn't voice. I confronted them, I said quietly. "The party isn't about money. It's about shame, about Evan Tran not being a Whitfield." His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. "I should have seen it sooner," I whispered, staring into the steam curling from my mug. "I thought, if they saw how happy I was, how good you are, they'd come around. But they don't want good. They want pedigree." Evan rested his hand on mine, warm, steady. "Claire, I didn't want to make this harder, but there's something I haven't told you. I looked up, instantly alert. What do you mean? He hesitated, just a flicker, but enough to make my heart pause. There's a reason I've been so distracted lately. I've been in negotiations with Pinnacle Tech. My eyebrows pulled together. The healthcare giant? He nodded. They're acquiring my startup, the algorithm I've been building for predictive patient care. It's been in development for 3 years. Final approval and legal closure are scheduled for Monday. The deal's worth around $175 million. I blinked. Wait, what? He pulled out his phone and opened his email. There it was. A message from Pinnacle Tech's legal counsel. Words like final tranche, equity structure, and congrats again on the valuation jumped out like fireworks. I read it 3 times before the meaning sank in. You built this? He nodded. Every line of code. I kept it quiet because, well, a lot of reasons. But mostly, I wanted you to choose me for me, not for what I might become. Something in my chest cracked open. A flood of pride and fury surged up at once. They think you're beneath them, I whispered. They see your old Honda, your quiet smile, and they think you're small. But you're not. You've been building something that could change lives, on your own. Evan smiled softly. It was never about proving anything to them, but maybe now, they'll listen when you speak. I reached for his hand. They'll listen when we speak. The night wrapped around us like velvet as I walked to the small desk in the corner of the room. I opened my laptop. The screen glowed to life. I clicked on the design software I used for my firm's presentations and opened a new file. The words came to me easily. Brunch invitation. This Sunday. 11 a.m. The Riverside Terrace. I smiled as I began typing. This time, it wouldn't be their guest list. She opens her laptop and begins drafting a new set of invitations. This time, to brunch. My father once said the Riverside Terrace was only for deals worth making, so I brought him a deal worth choking on. The sun spilled like liquid gold through the tall windows of the Riverside's private room, catching the shimmer of crystal glassware and the nervous gleam in my mother's eyes. A waiter placed our mimosas gently on the table, as if the air wasn't already thick enough with tension. Evan and I arrived precisely at 10:58, dressed exactly the way we had planned. He wore the same navy button-down and dark jeans he'd worn the first time my parents met him. Plain, unassuming. The same outfit they deemed too casual for dinner at the club. I wore a simple sheath dress, understated jewelry, and confidence like armor. Let them see what they tried to erase. My father rose with rehearsed cheer. Claire, Evan, wonderful to see you both. Thanks for making time, I replied smoothly, pulling out my chair. Of course, my mother added, her tone honeyed but strained. We were so intrigued by Robert Maxwell's call. Such exciting news. Evan gave a small smile. It's been a long journey. My father steepled his fingers. We'd love to discuss possible collaborations between your company and Whitfield Properties. There's a new medical complex in the pipeline. I held up my hand. No need to jump ahead, I said. First, some clarity. From my bag, I pulled a black folder and set it down. The sound it made on the table, soft but decisive, cut through the ambient brunch music like a blade. Inside were the acquisition documents, Evan's signature, Pinnacle Tech's logo, the final valuation. I opened it and turned it toward my parents. They leaned in, reading the top line. My father's brow twitched. My mother blinked, her fork hovering above her fruit salad. Forgotten. David Tran, my father said slowly. Evan Tran, I corrected. Founder and majority shareholder of BioVista Health Analytics. Sold to Pinnacle Tech for 175 million. Silence stretched long and tight. My mother recovered first, forcing a smile. Evan, you should have told us. Such ambition, such potential. Evan didn't flinch. I wasn't hiding. I was just working, quietly. My father's face darkened, the gears in his head visibly grinding. We approached Pinnacle Tech last year, pitched a proposal for the Northside facility. And they declined, I said evenly. Funny, isn't it? Turns out they had other plans. Vanessa, seated beside Brad, shifted uncomfortably. Brad looked like he'd swallowed a pebble. You didn't just misjudge a man, I continued, voice low but clear. You misjudged me. Claire, my mother started. No, I said, placing a finger on the folder. You judged him by his shoes. You missed the empire in his mind. My father cleared his throat. This changes things. It changes nothing, I said, except that now you have to face what you tried to hide. That love, loyalty, brilliance, none of those fit into your country club checklist. My mother's smile cracked. We only ever wanted the best for you. I met her gaze. Number, you wanted what looked best. Across the table, Vanessa's eyes were glassy. She looked down, then back up, silent, but watching. My father straightened. So what now? I stood, smoothing my dress, the folder still open between us. This brunch isn't for business. It's a mirror. Look closely at what you lost. If this moment made your heart clench even just a little, drop a comment, tap that like, and follow for more stories like this. Your support means the world and fuels the next chapter. Vanessa once told me she envied my freedom. Today, she asked what it cost. The bar was tucked away in a narrow corner of Hyde Park, just upscale enough to be familiar, just quiet enough to feel like neutral ground. Dim pendant lights hovered like fireflies above the small tables, and a melancholy saxophone solo drifted from the speakers overhead. I was already 2 sips into a glass of Cabernet when Vanessa walked in, clutching her purse like a lifeline. She spotted me and offered a small wave, nervous, like this was a first date or a confession. Maybe both. Hey, she said softly as she sat down. Hi. We let the silence stretch as the waitress approached. Vanessa ordered a white wine without looking at the menu. I wasn't sure you'd come, I admitted. I wasn't sure I should. Her honesty startled me. Vanessa had always been polished, scripted, trained since birth to say the right thing in the right room. But here, tonight, something in her had unraveled. I wanted to talk after brunch, she said, eyes flicking down to her folded hands. But I didn't know how. You don't have to say anything, I said. Number, I do. She took a breath. I'm sorry. My wine glass froze midair. I mean it, she continued, for pretending not to see what they did to you, for being part of it. I set my glass down. You weren't the worst of it, Vanessa. I was the silence that let it happen, she said bitterly. And that's almost worse. I didn't argue, because she wasn't wrong. Vanessa leaned in slightly, her voice lower now. You remember when I got into Dartmouth and Mom threw that ridiculous garden party? Yeah, I said. You had matching napkins with the school crest. She gave a breathy, almost laugh. I overheard Mom that night telling Aunt Dana that she was relieved you didn't get in, because 2 daughters at Ivy League schools would have made our brand look too ambitious. I blinked. She said, Claire's more the local architect type anyway. Let her shine in her own, smaller way. Vanessa looked up, shame flickering behind her lashes. That was the first time I realized she didn't just prefer me. She was curating us. She still is, I murmured. Vanessa nodded. I think I knew, but it was easier not to look too closely. I pulled out my phone and slid it across the table. On the screen, a timeline I'd been assembling the past week. Snapshots of emails, screenshots of guest list revisions, payment receipts mysteriously shifted from my name to Vanessa's, and a half-finished draft of a fake explanation Mom had sent extended family. Claire decided on a more intimate ceremony, nothing to worry about. Vanessa's face paled as she scrolled through. "They didn't just cut you out," she whispered. "They rewrote the story so no one would even notice you were gone." I said nothing. She set the phone down carefully, like it might crack. "I thought I was protected," she said, voice shaking, "but I was just being used better." There it was, the truth breaking through years of loyalty and denial. I didn't gloat. I couldn't. The grief in her eyes was too real. Vanessa dabbed at her cheek with a napkin and let out a shaky breath. "There's something else." I waited. "They're planning to reintroduce me to Jonathan Henderson at the gala next week." I clenched my jaw. "I thought you were still with Brad." "I am," she said. "But Dad told me the firm's future depends on strategic partnerships, and Mom's been whispering about image and legacy." "Let me guess," I said coldly. "Brad doesn't fit the mold." Vanessa looked down. "They've started leaving him off guest lists. Last week they told him the dinner was postponed, then held it without him." "Classic," I muttered. She looked up at me, eyes raw. "I know what they're doing, and I don't want to let them. But you're afraid," I finished for her. She nodded. "I've built so much with their approval, the job, the connections. And how much of that is actually yours?" She flinched. "I'm not judging," I added quickly. I've lived what happens when you stop dancing to their music. It's hard, but it's free." Vanessa stared into her wine like it might hold an answer. "I'm not sure I can undo everything," she said quietly, "but I want to stop helping them do it. Some exits feel like defeat. Others feel like freedom. This one felt like fire finally burning clean." The elevator glided to a soft stop at the rooftop level. Through the brushed glass doors, a golden wash of lights stretched across the skyline, flickering off the mirrored panels and glassware like a manufactured sunset. I stepped out first. Evan followed, and behind us, Robert Maxwell adjusted his cufflinks with casual power. Security didn't even blink. No one stopped the man behind Pinnacle Tech from bringing 2 guests to the Whitfield Properties gala. I hadn't worn anything flashy, just a sleek black jumpsuit, hair swept up, minimal jewelry. But the silence when I stepped onto that terrace was louder than a standing ovation. Heads turned, eyes narrowed. Champagne paused mid-air. I wasn't on the guest list. Again. But this time, I didn't need permission to walk through the door. Edward was near the open bar, speaking with a pair of investors when he saw us. His expression barely flickered before the practiced charm took over. He nodded and began walking toward us, Lorraine following half a step behind in a pearl-studded gown, smile razor-sharp. "Claire," she said first, all teeth. "What a surprise." "Not really," I replied, voice light. "I'm sure Robert mentioned we'd be attending." She faltered, just for a beat, before regrouping. "Of course. Always nice to reconnect." Edward extended a hand to Evan. "Mr. Tran, glad you could join us tonight. There's quite a bit of buzz around your new initiative." Evan shook it with quiet poise. "It's an exciting moment." I let them talk while I scanned the room. Investors, journalists, a few familiar faces from Cincinnati's boardroom royalty. And then, Vanessa. She stood by the main table, holding a flute of something pink and sparkling. When our eyes met, she didn't look away. She didn't smile either. But she raised her glass slightly, almost like a nod. I nodded back. Just then, Robert stepped into the center of the terrace and clinked his glass gently. Once, twice. Conversations hushed. "Good evening, everyone," he began. "I'm thrilled to be here, especially to celebrate the incredible work that so many of you have done. But I'd also like to take a moment to introduce someone who represents the future of equitable, data-driven healthcare." He gestured to Evan. Evan stepped forward, composed as ever. "Thank you, Robert. Tonight, I'm proud to announce the launch of the TranMed Initiative, an open-access platform funded by the Pinnacle acquisition, aimed at expanding predictive care to underserved communities nationwide." A small wave of murmurs spread through the crowd. "What's particularly exciting," he continued, "is that we'll be partnering directly with local nonprofits and public hospitals, not through commercial developers." His glance was pointed. He didn't say Whitfield Properties, but the message landed anyway. I watched Lorraine's smile tighten. Edward's fingers curled slightly on the glass in his hand. They were losing the narrative. When the crowd erupted in polite applause, Lorraine leaned toward me. "Claire, I think we should talk, in private." I turned to her. "We've had plenty of chances for that." She reached out, touching my arm lightly. "I know things got off track, but this is unnecessary. You've made your point. Can't we put the past behind us?" Her voice was honeyed, rehearsed. I saw it for what it was, a performance for whoever might be watching, another bid for control, wrapped in civility. I stepped back. "You had your chance when all I wanted was your presence. Now I just want my peace." Lorraine's face twitched. Her gaze darted around, checking to see who had heard. I didn't care. A moment later, Vanessa walked up beside me. Her heels clicked like punctuation on the marble floor. She took the mic from a nearby staffer. "I'd like to say something," she announced. The room hushed again. "I've spent most of my life doing what was expected, being who I was told to be," she said, voice steady but clear. "But tonight I'm choosing something different. I'm stepping back from my role at Whitfield Properties. Effective immediately." A collective gasp. Edward visibly paled. Vanessa turned to me and reached for my hand. "This is my sister. I should have stood by her earlier, but I'm here now." I didn't say anything. I just squeezed her hand. Lorraine looked like she might faint. Edward opened his mouth to protest, but thought better of it. The press surged forward, cameras flashing, questions buzzing like flies. I let go of Vanessa's hand and turned to Evan, who was already by my side. We didn't wait for the applause, or the fallout. We just walked, through the rows of stunned guests, past the bar, the flowers, the string quartet that kept playing like the Titanic wasn't sinking. The city opened up ahead, glittering, raw, real. Claire walks out, hand in Evan's, the city lights behind them, leaving behind the legacy she was never meant to inherit. If you've read this far, thank you. And if Claire's journey stirred something in you, share your thoughts in the comments, hit that like, and follow for the next story. Let's keep telling the ones that don't always get told.